Welcome back to this week's episode of the People Success Circle podcast. I'm Mindy East, your host, and I am excited this week to start this episode off with a personal story. I want to tell you about how I became the networker that I am today. You see, by the time I started my business 5 years ago, I had moved 12 different times in my adult life, lived in 6 different states and 12 different cities. Now, that's a lot for anyone, and there are a few reasons that this happened for me. I didn't really move because I wanted to. I moved because of opportunity and also life circumstances. So I'll start with the opportunity. I worked for McDonald's Corporation for quite a few years, many years in high school. So 3 years in high school, and then 7 years after college. And during my time after college, I was on some special projects that just gave me opportunity. And when those opportunities presented themselves, they often came with a move and they often came with a promotion. Actually, they always came with a promotion. And so what happened for me was I would move anytime the company had a really great opportunity. I was single, I didn't own a place, and I just really viewed it as great experience. And so I relocated with McDonald's 6 times in 7 years as a young adult. And every time I had to move, I also had to start out with no network. I was in Atlanta or Orlando, all over the place with my coworkers, but nobody else besides that. And so through that, that's what kind of started me to realize that I couldn't just wait for my network to happen. I needed to actually pursue a network in each new place. Well, fast forward, then I married my husband, who was an officer in the Marine Corps. And as you know, military people have to move. And he moved every 3 years for the remainder of the time that we were together. Then later, after leaving McDonald's, I became a military spouse. My husband was an officer in the Marine Corps, and that meant moving to different states and different cities and different communities, continuing to start all over again. So, over the course of my adult life, I ended up rebuilding my professional network many times over. And after doing that 12 times, it sounds so much, 12 times, I started noticing something really interesting. That the people who seemed to create opportunities the fastest in these settings weren't necessarily the people who went around and collected business cards and kind of worked the room. Those relationships were actually the thing that helped me become remembered and who helped me grow this very vast network over time. You see, I didn't try to forget about the people in the other places. Every time I moved, I was building and building my network to what it is today. And when it comes to networking, for years we've been told the adage that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And over time, I have started to realize that that story is not true anymore because now today's professional network has hundreds and even thousands of people connecting all the time at events and online. Our networks have the power to become bigger and better due to technology. But here's the other thing. I said it's not what you know, it's who you know. And honestly, I think it's not even that. I don't think it's who you know. I think it's who knows you. That visibility is so important to maintaining relationships over time. And that prompted me to do this episode about what modern day networking is all about. It has changed over the years because of so many different reasons. Networking has changed and evolved. And part of that is because of technology. Part of it is because we carry phones around all the time. Part of it's because we just live in a digital, hyper-connected world now. But regardless of the reason, we all need to embrace the fact that it has changed. So in this episode, I'm going to teach you how to network in this modern world. One thing I've learned about networking is the real question is not necessarily who you know, but who knows you. And that means that people have to remember you in a room that you're not even in. Because opportunities actually rarely happen in the networking conversation that you're having. They happen after the fact when someone remembers you later in the future. So oftentimes we think about, going to an event. I think this is old school. We used to think going to an event, we would want to say at the end, I left with leads. I left with business cards. I left with people to follow up with. And honestly, that has changed. You cannot look at the success of an event by how many leads you got, because honestly, pitching is a thing of the past. We need to go to networking events so that we can actually get to know people and be interested in other people. When we do that, people will then remember us in the future, because you probably have heard this. People don't remember what we say, they remember how we made them feel. So when it comes to in-person networking, like I said, you are rarely getting a lead or a sale at the event. It always happens after the fact. So the goal is actually not to collect the right number of business cards or to get firm leads. The goal is actually to be remembered. And that is a different mindset from how networking used to be to how it is today. If we zoom out for a minute, we can actually see a larger shift with how opportunities now flow. Think about it this way. In the industrial economy, opportunity flowed with productivity. In the knowledge economy, opportunity flowed with expertise. But today, we're operating in something different. It's the recognition economy, where opportunities increasingly flow to the people who are easiest to recognize and remember, not the most qualified. In fact, opportunities are not going to the most qualified person in the room, they're going to the most memorable person, the person who simply shows up more. So, gone are the days where the most experienced person gets the opportunity or gets the business. Now it's the most memorable, because when people are overloaded with this hyper connected world of information that we live in, they rely on recognition to make decisions quickly. So let me pause for a second and ask you a quick question. If someone asked your network today, do you know anyone who does exactly what you do? Would they know exactly what to say about you? Or would they hesitate? Maybe they'd say something like, oh, yeah, I know a person who does something like that. I just can't remember exactly what they do. That moment right there is exactly where opportunities are either created or lost. And that right there is where the modern networking formula comes in. Opportunities tend to come when two things work together. And those two things are visibility and relationships. When you have the relationships, but you have little visibility, something predictable happens. You become out of sight, out of mind. People may like you, they may respect you, but they simply don't think of you often enough. Now, let's flip that a little bit. If you have visibility, but you don't have relationships, you may be known, but you're not trusted enough for someone to refer you. People see you, but they don't have the relational confidence to introduce you to others. But the real networking opportunity happens when those two things work together. Visibility keeps you top of mind, and relationships create the trust needed for someone to recommend you. And when those two things work together, networking becomes something much more powerful. It becomes the growth engine for your business and your career. Now, let's talk about why networking is kind of frustrating for people who are professional and who are just trying to get the leads and get the growth in their business, but they're not seeing progress. I actually see this all the time. Most capable professionals are already networking. They attend events, they meet people, they connect with people online, they have coffee conversations, but their networking still feels frustrating to them. And the reason is actually pretty simple. It's happening randomly instead of strategically. When we just go to events without a plan, when we scroll on LinkedIn without a plan, we tend to get no results. And then we start to think, well, maybe what networking doesn't work, or maybe going to those events is a waste of time. But to be honest, that is not the reason. When we network in a way that is strategic and purposeful, then we get results. And without it, visibility becomes inconsistent, relationships stay surface level, referrals are unpredictable. It's easy to assume that networking just doesn't work. But that's actually not the problem. The problem is the absence of a clear networking system. And that's actually where the shift comes in. The shift that professionals need to make today is actually pretty simple but powerful. We need to stop thinking of networking as meeting people, and we need to start thinking of networking as being known. Because when people clearly understand what you do, who you help, and why it matters, you become easy to remember. And when you're easy to remember, you're easy to refer. And referrals are still one of the most powerful sources of opportunity in business and in careers. When I started my business almost 5 years ago, I was used to having a corporate network. I was used to having a network that I built within the military community. But when we moved here to San Antonio 5 years ago, and I quit my corporate job and started from scratch, starting a business, I realized that it was going to take different skills in order for me to become known in a brand new city as a business owner, different than when I was in corporate. And so what I did was I really started to look at how I was showing up on LinkedIn and how I was showing up at in-person events and actually making a plan for what my calendar was going to look like with regards to networking. I would look at my calendar a month at a time, 2 weeks at a time, and then a week at a time, and make sure I had plenty of time scheduled for networking, both online and in person. And over time, it drastically helped me increase the growth of my business. In fact, now as I get ready to celebrate 5 years, I have a multi six figure business and a network that is probably the best I've ever had. And that is actually why I created Networking School, because I want to teach professionals and business owners exactly how to network in a way that gets them the results that they're looking for. As I wrap up this episode, I want to tell you that Networking School is for anyone who really sees the value of networking and who wants to be in a community with the structure and the strategy to make that the number one growth engine for your business. And so, like I said, that happens through visibility and it happens through relationships. In Networking School, you will learn my Remember Me roadmap and all the details about how to do each step. Step one is to define your direction, figure out what you want to be known for, and learn how to clearly tell people what that is. In addition, in define your direction, we really set your strategy and your goals. Step two of the Remember Me roadmap is to build your visibility. And that is a two-prong approach. In modern networking, you need to be visible in person and visible on LinkedIn. So that's what we cover in the second piece. And last but not least, we talk about strengthening those relationships because visibility alone is not enough. Relationships alone are not enough. It's the combination of visibility and relationships that will have the network that you use to grow your business. As I wrap up, I want to leave you with this. In today's hyper-connected world, relationships, they still matter. They might actually matter more than before, but relationships alone are no longer enough. because opportunities rarely go to the people who know the most people, right? They go to the person who people remember first. And the professionals who understand that modern day networking shift are the people who build networks that consistently create opportunity. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure that you hit the follow button and leave a review. Reviews help more than you know. Until next week, have a great week. I'll see you next time on the People Success Circle podcast.